Sup, party peoples out there in YouTube land. This is Roy Carter from Wrecktitution Media, and oh man, I have been liking the results of the U.S. election. It's been kind of interesting to see just the amount of social justice warrior freakouts and just the hypocrisy of the left. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, as everyone knows, Trump won, and it's kind of interesting to see what's going on with the fact that he hasn't even really. Like, he's not even in office, and he's already managed to convince Ford to not move down to Mexico, which is a really good win for him. And apparently, I guess Apple's even thinking about setting up a company here in North America. So that's interesting. So hopefully that'll go to the U.S. for more jobs there and help them out. So it's kind of interesting. I've never seen so much just hatred towards, like, this is probably a political first in a lot of regards. As a Canadian, just kind of sitting on the outskirts of it, like, I couldn't vote, but I was totally for Trump, as you can see behind me there. Just because, well, I've done my research. When you look at just the amount of just scandals that the Clintons have been involved in, and also other stuff with the Podesta emails and just the failure of the mainstream media, they've all been completely exposed. And I think that's a great thing for anybody who's got a YouTube channel or anybody out there, media organizations that are alternative, because, you know, they're the ones that I'm seeing now from footage from different events that are actually, crowdfunding and going through the grassroots method of getting their reporters out to actual news events, as opposed to just taking one or two political talking points from the White House, like we've seen so many times with CNN, so many times with NBC, MSNBC, ABC, you name it, the mainstream media in the States. And I didn't really realize how just in the bag for Hillary Clinton the Canadian media has been. CBC, CTV, pretty much every single time the mainstream media in the States would do an attack on Trump, then, I mean, I didn't hear anything. Like, it was pretty much just that stupid pussy video for 3 weeks here in Canada that they were, saying, oh my God, Trump's gonna lose now. He's definitely not getting the woman's vote. And then you got Anna Kasparian saying that she doesn't respect women, and, like, this is the same hypocrite from the Young Turks. That, first insult that she screams at Alex Jones when he crashed the RNC with her little broadcast there was calling him a fat fuck, after numerous videos of saying that anybody who says stuff like that is fat shaming. Just one of the many hypocrisies of liberal leading kind of hosts out there, because they're always trying to push. John Oliver, this is the same guy that was saying, please run. We don't want you as president, but we want you to run. And I think it's funny because, you see, America is the badass in the room. They've always done things their own way, and whether you like the results of that, is one thing to be debated for sure. But, they've never done if you tell them they can't have something, they're gonna have it. It's like, you're practically, this whole election, the media pretty much treated all of the viewers like, oh, if you're a certain race, you have to vote this way, or else you're racist, or else you're a homophobe, or else you're transphobe, or else you're, it's just, they use all these stupid titles and just trying to make Americans hate the fact that, they used to be a great and prosperous nation. I'm sorry, but America, under Obama, the first thing he did was bail out the banks. And I know people can put that on George W. Bush, but he had the opportunity to say, no, I'm not bailing out the banks. No, I'm not doubling the entire debt for the U.S. just to, give a blank check to a bunch of bankers who aren't going to change the way they do things to begin with. Were they going to get rid of CDOs? Nope. No, they're going to still keep. And in fact, they renamed and repackaged collateralized debt obligations to the point where it's just gotten to the housing bubble is going to pop again. It's just it's not based on any numbers, especially the UK. Here in Canada, oh my God! Like I said in many previous videos, when Harper kept the bubble inflated by pumping about $75 billion into the housing market here. He pretty much just kind of made it so that if the bubble does pop, we're screwed here in Canada. I mean, there's only a certain amount of heights that houses can actually raise to the point where people aren't getting the good kind of manufacturing jobs that they used to have here. More companies are going overseas, more companies are shutting down, and also we've got this horrible carbon tax that's going to be pretty much just, I mean, it's already been in place here in Ontario, and I mean, if the Liberals in the provincial election were to run right now, Kathleen Wynne, who's, for any of my American listeners or whatnot, she's pretty much, like, aside from being a total cunt, you know, she's also a lesbian too, which I don't really care about what people do behind closed doors. It's the fact that she's practically screwed over. Like, just the hydro prices have gone up just exponentially under the government's supervision here, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the adjustment of energy. It actually has a lot to do with because in the States, you know, you'll get it so that the you know, price of energy goes up a certain amount, a couple cents every, you know, certain amount of years or whatnot. But here in Canada, practically the government has a huge say in what goes on with the prices, plus the fact that I also mentioned a few videos ago that we switched over to a lot of our wind turbines without having enough energy to actually meet the demands of a lot of... I mean, in the summer we do. In fact, we actually have an excess, but you can't... it's hard to store that excess energy in the summer and use it in the wintertime through wind energy. It's actually... you have a lot more loss in power for any kind of stuff that they have out there, and just really expensive for the government of Ontario. But they've passed on the hydro rate to the point where, I mean, like, there's people that are getting $1,200, $1,500 hydro bills, and it is just insane. And where I live is a very rural kind of... it's like the dairy capital of Canada, so there's a lot of farmers that are just getting screwed completely over with these hydro prices, with them actually... I've talked to a few farmers in the farmers market that this is going to be their... maybe next year is going to be their last year, and some of them this was their last year. So just again, it's another one of those things where it's meant to, you know, put farmers off of their property, to pretty much... put people into these Agenda 2030 jokes of, you know, certain areas where you're allowed to go, in certain areas that's all urban, and people are just stuck into these little, like, New York-sized cubicles, pretty much, to live. And that's just... It's out there. It's plain. And I think it's kind of interesting. This election has really kind of gave a lot of credibility to people like myself who have... You know, I mean, like I said before, I mean, Alex Jones, he's been out there. He's, you know, he's religious. He's, you know, obviously pro-life. He's got certain things that, you know, I myself personally don't agree with. I believe I'm a pro-choice person myself. I don't really care what people do in the bedroom behind closed doors. And I also understand, but I also understand both sides of the pro-life and the pro-choice argument. You know, I mean, for people that are in a very low income area, don't have a future to give, you know, obviously I understand that adoption is one of those things, but I mean, when you look at a lot there's a lot of adoption cases or people that go through the system for Children's Aid Service that come out just completely destroyed and just messed up individuals, just because they've never had that kind of you know, or they've been in abusive families or been from home to home to home. My folks actually took in somebody who was kind of in this whole system here in Ontario and Canada, in Woodstock, and what happened was the young girl who was trying to just kind of like get her life on track and all that jazz ended up getting she was over at like one of those places where they take in kids as much as they can, and they've got like 12, like, you know, like a bunch of kids living there, and the mother ends up just kind of using them as government subsidy checks that come in for like the baby bonus and stuff like that. So they practically just kind of run these like kind of like puppy mills but for children, which is just messed up because, a lot of people in the States, and it's the same way in the States, actually, when I was doing some investigations. And I mean, here in Canada, like, if Children's Aid wants to go after you for whatever reasons, for any of your beliefs, you have absolutely no defense against that whatsoever. Whether it's looking into alternative medical treatments, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's a lot of aspects that pretty much get through a fine-tooth comb here in Canada, just like they do in the States too. And unfortunately, I've been looking through a lot of cases here in Canada and in the States. It seems like they do kind of get a lot of social justice warriors to kind of get on that. But I mean, for people that genuinely want to help kids that have had problems and stuff like that, and I understand that you do need like adoption services and stuff like that too. So I mean, that's just a whole nother discussion to get into itself. You can just go on for a while. But I mean, I understand that people should have some reverence when they're going in for like an abortion, or shouldn't use it as a form of birth control as if it's like condoms or whatnot, because obviously there's risks to the health down the long term aspect of things, and also for women that are trying to that down the road actually want to have kids, they have less of a chance. It's kind of sad with. I mean, when you have Planned Parenthood that are practically just over a glass of wine talking about how they want to, like how they cut up, baby, like, I guess embryo parts or stuff like that. But I mean, that's just kind of messed up to me, because I kind of see it as kind of just like either a Soylent Green / what's that thing with the movie where they have the people, the repo men with the with the organs and stuff, but kind of just like, making people as just like, and their organs into commodities and stuff, which is kind of messed up. But aside from that issue there, I mean, for the most part, I agree with Alex Jones. I mean, I'm not religious myself, but I mean, man, I mean, looking at these Podesta emails, I'm the kind of person that I'm probably going to be doing a video. It's just a matter of getting around to it, because there's just so many dang Podesta emails out there that are talking about, like, people are referring to it as Pizzagate, and man, if the Clintons, if Jeff Sessions or any of the appointees that Trump put in there to go, to make sure the Clintons are actually held accountable, if any of this stuff comes out, from what I've heard from the NYPD, there's been sources that have came out and said that's this huge network of pedophilia, and the media's been completely silent on it. And I mean, I know they've been silent on a lot of the WikiLeaks emails, but for regular people, for just anybody who's not even into politics, I've kind of shown them a couple of links in some of the emails that they've talked about, and even they've been kind of like, yeah, man, that's weird. Like, who brings, like, little kids over for, like, into a warm pool for entertainment, and also just like the fact that they have all those like weird code words. Like, there's a lot of code words in there that are obvious code words, like walnut sauce and just weird stuff that they have on that they're talking about. And there's been some videos out there that have kind of connected it, a lot of it, to the to, I guess, a pedophile ring. And yeah, and it's kind of crazy too when you're watching that Marina Abramovic, I think that was her name, or the girl who does like the weird like occult like spirit cookings and stuff, where they're like taking like pig's blood and urine and stuff and doing all kinds of weird shit on the walls. See, I actually have a friend who's is a Wiccan in the UK, who was telling me that that's kind of more of a dark kind of, that's not the kind of stuff that celebrates life and celebration. That's more of the stuff that's like trying to bring in like bad forces and all that stuff, if you believe in that. You see, for me, I keep an open mind. I don't believe, I mean, I'd like to think that there's, punishment for people in power that do evil deeds, because it seems like there's really not that much punishment for them here on this planet. So it's nice to have that thinking that in the afterlife bad people get their just desserts. So I mean, that's kind of an intriguing part. But to add to the actual like intricacies of believing that like every single thing that's put in the Bible is like complete truth, and that the earth is only 6,000 or 8,000 years old or something like that. I mean, that stuff I find very hard to believe. But I mean, when I've traveled, I mean, I noticed that Christians, like I've said in many videos beforehand, we're usually the first people to offer food, offer a shower, offer, like to be really nice people and stuff. And I mean, obviously you get people in any kind of religion that are looking more for the conversion points, right? To try to get you onto their wagon, so to speak. But, I mean, I've looked into many different types of religions, and I try to keep a spiritual kind of side to me. I mean, I don't try to do any, I don't try to go out and manipulate or try to do evil things on people. I just try to help out as much as I can, and that's really the best anyone can do. But, yeah, it's been kind of interesting with this whole Alex Jones. I'm so glad that they've been out there doing their thing because, I mean, you got to give respect to a guy who, has built his company up from the ground pretty much. A bunch of other people out there from the alternative media too. I mean, Dan Dix just got his website blocked from, I guess, Tim Hortons in Canada from that little Buffett-owned freaking hellhole junk-ass coffee. I mean, people like it. I mean, my mom, she's completely addicted to the coffee and stuff like that. But I mean, that's just people that they got you on coffee because that's what most people get in the morning, and they wake up and they take a nice little fix on that. But it's interesting. It takes a lot of guts to go out and say things that, especially in the 90s. I mean, when I used to listen to Alex Jones in the 90s and like the early 2000s, I mean, I thought myself that, I mean, like, some of the stuff this guy's saying, well, about 50% of it is completely just crazy, like, the whole government spying on you and stuff, and sure enough, it came out, The mass collusion in media with Operation Mockingbird, just how much the establishment media is in bed with mainstream media that tries to portray itself as objective and impartial, has been completely blown. And that's why I like about the fact that the WikiLeaks this election has really kind of shown anybody who's politically awake. And, I've gotten into so many conversations and arguments on Facebook and stuff, mostly because I started telling my folks, my family, all the crazy dark stuff that was going on with the Clintons, and how really the only criticism that's legitimate towards Trump is really is rhetoric. And rhetoric compared to, actually going into a country like, Libya and, causing it to be completely destabilized, killing thousands of people, and then resulting in the death of millions of people because you have Al-Qaeda groups, Boko Haram, that ended up going in there. So they go in there to take out a country's leader who, Gaddafi was batshit crazy. Don't get me wrong. He's sitting there with an umbrella talking, "Death to America!" The great Satan! And he's wearing this ivory and weird ass getup the dictator. But I mean, he did kind of help a lot of his people out in his country. They had a really good standard of living before all of this crap happened. And sure enough, the Libyan gold, the dinar that he was thinking about proposing, which would have been a huge, for people that don't understand the actual politics of the World Bank and the IMF, any country in Africa that decides to make its own currency apart from the central banking cartel and back it with gold to the central bankers. Gold is the enemy, even though they've completely manipulated it and made the paper bond gold market just a total joke. But they practically went in there and took Gaddafi out for that reason. And I mean, you got to look at the fact that Libya was a huge turning point for U.S. foreign policy. Because, hey, you could say anything bad about George W. Bush. I mean, I freaking hated the whole war in Iraq. Thought that was the stupidest idea. Thought going to Libya and Syria to bomb was a stupid idea. And sure enough, we got the refugee crisis, even though only really half of those people were from Syria or actually have real, Syrian passports, or most of them being military-age men, so it's definitely very cherry-picked for the refugees that they decide to bring over here. But I mean, that's another topic that I can go into at great detail with. I think the main thing about with Libya was, with Bush, it was all about going after the terrorists, so to speak, even though the Bin Ladens were best buddies with the Bush family, and he had the airlift of evil. For anybody who wants to Google that, that's definitely documented. I don't really think I need to put a lot of links in these kind of FaceTime videos, because I'm not trying to prove a point. Other videos that I do where it's mostly you don't get to see my ugly mug with my long ass beard, I actually try to go into more, and there's been plenty of times, especially with the global warming video and that whole climate change debacle, actually ran out of room in the descriptions to put links to back up what I was saying for footnotes, because when I actually do take that time, it's very, very informative, and I try to get into there to just kind of show you what my point is. And I think it's kind of interesting how, when Bush decided to go away from the whole, taking out Al-Qaeda and stuff like that, and using that as an excuse. I mean, 15 years ago, sorry, my bad. All we heard was terrorist, Islamic extremists, and now the media is not even allowed to mention it. The White House doesn't even like to mention terrorism or Islamic jihad. And I don't want to attack the Muslims and stuff like that, because it's a very small group that's actually doing a lot of the crazy shit. I mean, even if there's people that believe in Sharia law who are Muslim for the most part, that like to kind of just stick into their own communities, it's not good overall for the immigration side of things if they don't kind of get integrated into an economy and also into the culture. But I mean, you take a country like Canada, where we really don't care if you're from different countries and stuff like that. You can have your culture and have different areas where you can branch off in your own little cultural areas and go to the mosques and have that little community. I mean, the Jewish people here in Canada do it. The Ukrainian people sure as hell do it, because they're always putting protests on how evil Putin is. Meanwhile, they have a neo-Nazi government. But that's actually kind of an interesting thing that's not getting covered in the media right now, is the huge rise in people that have had enough of the fascist, the censorship of media, the just outright bully tactics. And there's actually some good Ukrainians that are getting sick and tired of the government being run by neo-Nazis. And no mention of that in the mainstream media. It's very hard to find any news coming out of Ukraine, just because of the way that they've been silencing journalists and just kind of doing their jackbooted type of tyranny there. And I think it's funny how everyone's calling Trump a fascist when we openly support a fascist country. That's just because apparently supporting neo-Nazis in the Azov battalion is so much better than supporting Putin, who only has 3 military bases and just wants to prosperity for his country. So I mean, I wouldn't want to live in Russia, just because I've got a brother who's gay, and I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to him. And I mean, I don't care what people do behind closed doors. I mean, that's their prerogative. As long as it's consenting adults and it's not any kind of kid diddling or bestiality, then I'm fine with that. I mean, that's when you start to draw the line between people need to go to fucking jail for animal abuse and fucking kitty shit. So, but I mean, I never thought that. When Alex Jones used to say that there's all these pedophile cults and stuff in the UK and everything, and this is 90s, 2000s. I was kind of I find that very hard to believe. But sure enough, Jimmy Savile, the Prince Charles connection, fact that a lot of people in the BBC covered for him for many years, and the fact that even the UK Parliament wanted to do an investigation into pedophilia, and then all of a sudden they decided to kill it. So just goes to show you that there is the possibility that there is some pretty dark shit that's going on behind closed doors. And I mean, the regular people that get into power aren't average day-to-day citizens. They're the elite. They're people that have absolutely no connection with the actual base of people who they're ruling. They're people that have more wealth than what they know to do with. And the thing about people that have a lot of money and a lot of power is you can practically do whatever you want to do. So really the only barrier that comes down, aside from obviously funds and influence, is practically the amount of stuff that you can do and get away with. I mean, there's a lot of it's practically everyone. Most people on Wall Street who has money is doing everything they can to try to get as close to breaking rules or breaking rules as they can without having to worry about the controls that are put in there through the system. So, I mean, there's that's just how it is. They're always going to have that need to try to bypass certain rules and regulations. But I mean, when you get to the point where there's like two sets of rules for regular people, and I mean, let's be honest, if any average person, any working Joe, were to happen to come across, let's say, a huge dossier full of secret, like secret files and top secret stuff, and if they decided to hold on to it and like put it on a private email server, and then you get caught with it, they'd be screwed. They'd be throwing their ass in prison. They'd be getting the cock meat sandwiches from Guantanamo, like in Harold and Kumar. That's pretty much what would happen to any other person. But Hillary Clinton's completely protected. I mean, she was protected in the fact that her Clinton Foundation completely ripped off the people of Haiti. Only like less than 10% of that actually went towards the people of Haiti, and they crapped in their freaking water tank and actually gave a lot of them cholera and killed people off that way. 5 years later, the place is still horrible. The hurricane just kind of washed what little recovery efforts have been made into that place, and it's horrible. It really is. But I mean, you also have to blame a lot of stuff on the Haitian government too for not trying to find different aspects and different ways of doing things that they could actually, like start getting some more like gardens, start growing more stuff. But there's always comes down to just give us more money. We need to run our institutions and stuff, and that's where you get into aspects of corruption and stuff like that too, which is sad because ultimately that's just another barrier that gets put on in front of people that desperately need the aid. And with Obama, I have to say the switch from going after anybody who's considered a terrorist or Al Qaeda or whatnot. I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, when they went into Afghanistan, I mean, one of the first couple things they did was, put a contract in so McDonald's could get in there. I shit you not. And also putting in for a pipeline. So, I mean, that pretty much just bankrupted Afghanistan right there. And I think it's kind of interesting how there's so much talk about how there's all these opiate deaths that are happening in North America, and the media won't mention the fact that we're getting, like, after we went into Afghanistan, opium production just skyrocketed. In fact, it's up 43% just this year because it was one of the perfect seasons for growing opium, and that's practically Afghanistan's like main export now is opium. Like, yeah, they've also got some and stuff that doesn't get mentioned. A lot of people don't know about this, but I've been looking through BNN, Financial Times of London, that they were also talking about how Afghanistan has a lot of actual precious minerals and different stuff there too, which a lot of those rights were getting sold off. But guess to who? To the Chinese, because for some messed up reason, with this whole globalist push that there's been for the past little while, they think it's completely okay to give China access to all of the precious metals, all the rare earth minerals, just because it makes them it makes it easy overall. This is the thinking for Wall Street, that since China's production costs are so low and that they keep devaluating their own currency so that it's very cheap for people to buy into Chinese companies, then ultimately it'd be a good thing for the CEO on Wall Street that needs to make an extra few bucks. But and it's kind of messed up to see how just kind of like I mean, when Obama first went into when they started bombing in Libya, they actually were funding those rebels that were taking out Gaddafi. A lot of them were Al Qaeda, and it's been confirmed by many different sources. Even the White House themselves have said that some of those people were questionable. I mean, I remember Geraldo, he was going on the ground. That's probably one of the last few times I've actually seen Fox do any kind of investigative, anything could be considered journalism. And they have them in there, and they have these dudes that are just all got the black flag, and are going off and just going Allah Akbar, or whatever the hell they freaking I don't fucking know. But anyways, yeah, so you could just tell that they were not trained. They were just rebel troops that, and even, you know, Geraldo, as much as I hate that guy, you know, at least he had the balls to go there. And that's probably one of the last times in the past bit that I've actually seen Fox be an actual news organization. I mean, I know there's a lot of conservatives out there that think Fox is good, but I'll give it honestly, aside from Hannity, Judge Napolitano, I think Lou Dobbs, there's really not a whole lot of like reasonable voices on there that actually look at things from, and you know what's sad about the media is that it's hard to find an actual media outlet that is objective, that has like an equal amount of, you know, kind of, it's very hard because, you know, obviously when you're looking at one-person shows for the alternative media and you're looking at organizations that are very small mom and pop, they generally tend to have a certain viewpoint, a certain aspect of where they're coming from. And like all media sources, I mean, CNN used to have that kind of allure of, we try to be impartial, we have conservatives, Republicans and libertarians. Well, now they've been having more libertarians on there because they wanted to steal votes from Trump, but it was kind of interesting how just the media, especially with the WikiLeaks this time around, have just came completely out in the open. I mean, even giving debate questions to Hillary Clinton beforehand, just, oh my God, just the amount of, like, there's no question in my mind that she did not know what these questions were going to be at the different debates that she was going to. Because just the way she would go, oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, and then starts going on this huge long thing. It's just, it really did feel, to someone like me, here I am listening to her go on this, like, it felt like she was talking in a prepared kind of orchestrated sort of way with her the debates. But I mean, she also lied. Like, she's a really good talker. Like, she can keep talking at length and use the most generic, basic terms, and that's 30 years of being in politics, where you can keep talking out of your ass and not actually say a damn thing. And I think it was kind of funny. People for the longest time were saying that Trump didn't even have a plan when, you know, he had his plan up on his website for 3 months before the election. His 100-day action plan too was kind of interesting. Yeah, I like his idea of getting, you know, draining the swamp and making so that there's, you know, career senators and congressmen, because I think that, you know, when you get people that are in bed with big, you know, with the lobbyists and stuff. I mean, if the lobbyists want to, you know, run Washington and pay a bunch of money, well, they might as well start getting ready to pay out more, because when you have new politicians that are coming in every now and then, they need more money to buy them off, right? So I could see that being, you know, obviously it doesn't fix a systematic problem, but you know, at least it puts the money, it hurts the lobbyists in the money. And I think the backlash is one of the biggest things. And I think it's kind of funny how Van Jones, right after for CNN, starts talking about how this is like a white lash and all this bullshit. The same people who voted for Obama voted for Trump, especially in the Great Lakes regions. I mean, there's no getting around that. And I think it's just crazy how all these tolerant liberal people that were saying, oh, like, and everyone's making fun of Lacey Green for her hypocrisy, and because she's like talking about whatever happens from the outcome of this election, I hope we're deeply divided and stuff like that. It's like, it's the left that is being divisive here. You know, the right one, deal with it. And I mean, in a country like the States, it really is the lesser of two evils. But I mean, you have Trump that brought to light the 28 pages when he started talking about it in his campaign. Then Obama decided, oh, maybe I should release this, even though he had no intentions of ever releasing the 28 pages. But he knew that it would look good on him if he released it beforehand, before Trump got in there and made a big thing out of it. I mean, Jeff Sessions, one of the biggest pushers for the 28 pages to be released. I mean, he was... you know, I'm glad that he's in, because I think he's probably one of those people that could do a good job at actually going after government corruption, as opposed to, you know, it's like, oh, well, Hillary, James Comey cleared it. It's like, has anyone not, like, done investigation into the fact that James Comey is the most bought out freaking he's more political than he is an FBI director, and I hope he gets his ass fired. I mean, you have Loretta Lynch that was meeting with Bill Clinton. You know, I mean, we're talking about so many different laws were broken this election, either through campaign finance, through just the, like the DNC links just showing about how they just completely were paying people to dress up as Bernie supporters and go to Trump events to start shit. I mean, if Trump did that to Hillary Clinton supporters, there'd be a fucking shit show. And there was in the last little bit, because it was Alex Jones that had their, well, hey, if we're going to play warfare, might as well get the Bill Clinton rape shirt. And sure enough, most of the Hillary Clinton's rallies were getting crashed by people saying Bill Clinton is a rapist. And, you know, I mean, it's an underhanded, dirty tactic, but when you look at just how the Democrats were playing, like, every possible angle from every kind of demographic, every kind of NGO globalist narrative to try to destroy that country or to get people to vote for Trump is just ridiculous. I have never seen in any election, well, maybe some of the controlled elections where, you know, all those ballots and 110% of the people voted for a certain person, you know, that kind of backlash. And what I think is really kind of messed up is I try to tell people that, you know, that are just who I've talked to who don't like Trump. And I'm like, hey, you can not like Trump. I did not like Bush. You know, I mean, I thought Obama would be light years better. Apparently not. So, you know, you can have a dislike or disdain for a president. I mean, so many people, and there were, like, when memes were first coming out, to the point where, like, it was a big thing. I remember all the Bush memes were just, would make me just kind of laugh my ass off for days when I was in high school. But, you know, it's gotten to the point where when you look at just the disdain, where people are actually saying, oh, no, we're just gonna, he's not my president, I don't, you know, and they're going out in, like, liberal cities of all places and, like, causing shit, is ridiculous. And a lot of these, you know, I mean, George Soros should be arrested. I mean, if you're going to be paying millions and millions of dollars in a country that, you know, in a foreign country to pay protesters, this is the same thing that he's done in many different countries. It's ridiculous. Where he pays these provocateurs to go out and protest and start destroying shit, and then, you know, he gets away with it. He's allowed to keep doing this. I mean, hey, if people want to go out and protest for the next month about Trump getting elected, then they have the right to do that. But I think it's pretty disingenuous and messed up. And the narrative has been getting out there from the alternative media that when you have someone like George Soros that is openly putting ads on, like Craigslist and stuff like that, for people to get paid up to $1,500 a week to protest, plus bonus hours and overtime and all this crap and food, and all the buses that were getting paid for these protesters to go to these big events in big cities, really goes to show you that it's not a grassroots organization. It is a funded NGO, globalist operative initiative to get as much civil and racial division as humanly possible to try to start a civil war, which is what they want. You know, because then there's all this talk about, oh, Hillary won the popular vote. Hillary won the popular vote. What, by a few 100,000? Like, how many illegals voted that weren't supposed to vote? How many dead people voted in this election? You know, it's a damn miracle that Trump won. In fact, I think Bev Harris or whatnot was talking about how she was trying to get the data back from from the voting machines, and in 5 states they completely refused. So there's some definitely weird stuff going on. I mean, even beforehand with the electronic machines, there's videos that people, even though it was illegal to, you know, and I think that's ridiculous. You should be able to go in there and especially if you're trying to vote for a Republican and it keeps going to the Democrat above, and there's plenty of times where they're hitting the vote for a Republican and it goes to a Democrat. It's like, oh my God. And maybe there is some divine intervention. Maybe God decided to malfunction those Soros machines, and that's the reason why we have a Trump presidency. Because I've never seen the establishment so 100% sure that a candidate was going to win and then have like their, pretty much a pie of reality smashed right in their freaking face. So I really do think that it might have been actually attempted to steal it away from Trump. But, I mean, let's be honest. There was a landslide this election. There's only a certain amount of times where you can tell the average American, after your government is, like, taking their taxpayer money and screwing them over, that they can't vote for a certain candidate because then they're a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe, all these stupid freaking phobes or ists or isms, and just ridiculous. Most Americans don't believe in that shit. They believe in hard work. They believe in, American exceptionalism. And they don't really give a damn about the whole political correctness aspect of things. Millennials, though, sadly, are being brainwashed in the colleges and universities. And I mean, hey, it's good to have a knowledge of, like, racial stuff that's gone on in your country and past events. But let's be honest. I mean, most colleges and universities treat Abe Lincoln as if he's like the god of black people, like he is the freer of everyone, when he said many times that if he could save the Union and not free a single black person, he'd do it, I mean? And then, like, let's demonize Jefferson for, trying to get rid of slavery even though he owned slaves and stuff like that. There's just so many aspects of just generalized education, especially with the whole Common Core thing in the States, which, I'm sorry, but any educational institution that tries to tell you that you can get a math question right for doing all the work and having the wrong answer is stupid. Is not helping the people of their country whatsoever. And it shows off. I mean, most people in the States, when you get these Mark Dice videos where he's going out there asking people who the vice president is, and they don't even freaking know. It's a screwed up and messed up country. But the entertainment and the aspect of things that are so kind of put out there for the millennials, that is all completely controlled propaganda and just marketed brainwashing. People don't see there's been plenty of times where you see people out there when they're saying Trump's a racist, but like, okay, tell me what's the exact quote that he said, and hey, you know what, Trump being a businessman and not a politician, I understand he was on the road, he was just kind of giving it all. For a 70-year-old guy, man, he was on the road a lot more than Hillary Clinton, which had a lot to do in his favor, because he was going to the average. I mean, you're looking at like 10 to, and that's just like the lowest estimate, to like 30,000 people that were showing up at Trump rallies. I mean, you had thousands of people that were even showing up on like a short-term notice on a couple of different venues that he decided to stop off on. And I mean, people had to get that information practically through like his website. So that's a very huge reach of people that were definitely going for Trump. And I think it's kind of funny how the media tries to say, oh, well, all these secret Trump voters. No, there was a lot of people that were proud to be Trump voters. In fact, as soon as they said they were a Trump voter, then, sure enough, all these, crazy liberals would come out and start attacking. And you know what? I have no problem with people on the left who are actual classical liberals, who, believe in free speech, who believe that, you're allowed to have different opinions, even though, they might not agree with the rights, with the whole Roe versus Wade and stuff like that. I totally understand that. And those people are kind of cool in my books, because you can actually have a conversation with those people who are saying, well, I don't like the torture stance that, that Trump, different criticisms, the whole trade war with China and Mexico, like those are legitimate criticisms. And we'll have to see how that gets played out and how Congress and, how much they butt heads with the whole administration. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, it's gotten to the point where the media has made it like, have like Lacey Green that goes on and saying, oh my God, now Trump's gonna have the nuclear codes and he's gonna World War III. It's like, have you even listened to the fucking debates? Nobody understood. Like, I had to talk to so many different people. I'm like, Google no-fly zone, Syria, World War III. Because that's exactly what Hillary Clinton was proposing. And it got to the point where even the most average, basic American would realize you either have Trump, who said a few things that you may or may not agree with, and, you know, his celebrity aspect of it. And then you've got Hillary Clinton, who's openly trying to play all these different gender and race cards, and who is openly advocating for World War III against Russia. I mean, not just some other little country that they can go in and bomb the crap out of, and it's a 5-minute segment on, you know, the nightly news. We're talking about global thermonuclear war, and you have all of these little, like, you know, centrist, like, you know, popular little culture, little, like, especially YouTube channels like DeFranco and fucking, and you know what, I like listening to DeFranco, even though I have to cringe through a lot of his videos because he doesn't really know what the fuck he's talking about for most of it, but he does raise some good points about the whole, you know, cry bully aspect of the social justice warriors, and also how some of the people on the right are a little, you know, a little out there sometimes when they go for their whole warmongering neocon agenda. But I mean, you know, it's crazy to see how all these people are trying to, like, be like, oh, it's okay. Like, the reason why I haven't done a video in the last little while is because how many there's probably, like, millions of Trump and or Clinton reaction videos, ranging from woohoo to the world's gonna end now because someone, Miley Cyrus, told me so. It's fucking ridiculous. It's like, grow a pair of balls for the losers. I mean, when Obama won twice, you didn't see the Republicans out there saying, Obama's not my president, let's burn this shit down. No, because for the most part, Republicans are just down-to-earth, respectful, God-fearing people. You know, as opposed to the communists, the social justice warriors. I'm seeing all these trans groups that are going out there and actually attacking, like, even women who have, you know, an opinion anywhere right of fucking Mao Zedong. And, you know, they're getting attacked for it. And, you know, here they are trying to play this whole, like, oh, all these trans people are getting attacked because, you know, all these Trump supporters. When it's total bullshit. I'm seeing more videos of Trump supporters, even before the election was called, with the Trump signs, for example. I mean, there was more Trump signs that were being vandalized, damaged, you know, like, and I mean, obviously there's that Joey Salads freaking thing when I saw that, and saw it on Drudge Report, and then that night it got completely debunked. It's just people trying to, you know, stoke the fires, which is just, those people are fucking jackasses and shouldn't fucking, should be thrown in jail. I think he's actually facing some charges over that shit. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, I believe people should have their own political opinions, but when they start going around and, you know, trying to attack people that have theirs, that's when you got to draw the line. But no, it's totally, it's funny for the World Star Hip Hop videos when they're beating up people for being Trump supporters, you know? Apparently that's supposed to be cool. And they have these, like, music awards now where they're going there, and pretty much the music awards and the movie awards for the next, like, 2 years is just going to be a bunch of, you know, grandstanding, self-righteous, empty-headed fucking celebrities that are going to, you know, grandstand about how Trump is so bad and shit. It's just a fucking joke, really. I mean, here you have Obama, a guy who won a freaking Nobel Peace Prize and did more drone strikes and interventionist wars than most presidents have done beforehand. I've prosecuted more whistleblowers, have gone after more journalists that wanted to actually do, you know, investigative journalism. But, you know, nope, can't do that. I'm going to throw them in jail. And, you know, all these people talking about how Obama was the biggest thing, when Obamacare is a total screw job. It was actually modeled off of Romneycare, so it should be interesting to see what Trump wants to put in there. I mean, he's talking about having, so there's kind of a similar system, but with different companies that offer competitive rates, and I don't see the problem with that. I mean, I saw the problem with the fact that as soon as Obamacare was announced, then the pharmaceutical profits went up 40% for about 2 years, but nobody ever mentions that. I mean, they did in BNN, but they don't mention in the mainstream news, and just how much of the fact that the people, like that the insurance companies knew that they were going to get a win-win out of this anyways, because they're the ones that wrote the bill to begin with. I mean, I think it was funny when they came out and said, oh, there's no such thing as death panels. And then, you know, Bill Gates comes out there and says, oh, well, if I have to choose between hiring 10 new teachers and, you know, ending grandma's life, well, I'm going to choose the teachers. It just goes to show you. The VA scandal, just how they let veterans die and said that they didn't have the funding for it. You know, they've got complete buildings of, they didn't even, like, I don't even know if they've completely finished making their VA system. And I mean, here you go. The U.S. has, like, built its reputation for the last almost 100 years, even if you want to really get into it, the last 100 years as being a military and economic superpower, yet they haven't been able to completely digitize their veterans affairs records, which is ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about a country that makes most of its money off of going into countries with, their own citizens that are being used as soldiers and are, whether or not they agree with the war and stuff like that. I mean, let's be honest with you, the U.S. hasn't had a righteous war since World War II. And that's just the honest to God truth. The Gulf War was a joke. The many different weak-ass countries that they go and bomb. Vietnam, they used the Gulf of Tonkin incident to pretty much, it was a false flag to get people into the Vietnam War against the communists. And, that didn't work out too good for the people of the States, that's for sure. And it's sad to see how, a country that's willing to use a lot of their citizens for cannon fodder. I mean, when the whole war in Iraq thing was going on, you saw recruiters all around the States just going up to young men being like, hey, do you want to be a hero? You want to get paid? And blah, blah, blah. And now they're trying to say for people that they needed to go for advanced deployment, need to pay, money back with interest for people that they needed to fill up the ranks to go over to Iraq to, start an illegal war in the first place. And, I'm not trying to guilt trip any of the Americans that are watching this video whatsoever. I mean, I'm sure out of the couple dozen of people that actually are watching this are very politically aware. And I mean, I as a Canadian, I want America to do great. I want you guys to be prosperous because, a lot of our trade, a lot of our economy is deeply connected to the U.S. I mean, our economy could tank. You guys would feel it, but not to the point where if your economy tanks, we feel it a lot worse. We probably would have had a huge that whole housing bubble, but they pumped money into it. And the fact that we have 10th the population, that $75 billion was able to keep the bubble going for a bit, but you wouldn't have been able to get away with doing that in the States. That's why they ended up doing how many trillions of dollars, a blank check for the banks. So, and obviously those CEOs still kept getting their $1 million bonuses at the end of the year. But I just want the average American to live in prosperity, and I think it's kind of crazy how Trump hasn't even been in office and he's managed to get the Ford plant to stay. And I really do think that an import tax, especially on Mexico and stuff like that, is gonna help U.S. businesses. And I see many people that are like, oh, that's such an isolationist view of things. It's like, okay, you are in defense of an economic system that rewards countries like China based off of complete slave labor. And the most Orwellian control aspects of things. Most people don't even know what happened with the with the whole Tiananmen Square, because it's completely omitted from their internet. They go through ridiculous extreme measures to censor their people on the internet, and then you have China going out and saying, oh, well, now that, China is showing how telling Facebook and all these other companies that they need to have more censorship. It's how about we just how about the global media says, fuck you, China. You can have your own communist fucking control fucking slave grid where you have your mobile fucking execution vans where you harvest the fucking organs of Falun gun practitioners, and for the longest time, they were having forced abortions and making people fucking give up their kids or kill their kids. Or let's not forget the screwed up but real trade of organ trades that's been going on through the black market in those countries for quite some time. Amnesty International has made and as much as they try to go off on their own kind of social justice warrior aspects of things, that's things that they've been talking about since the 80s, back when China wasn't really considered our friend. So, it's kind of funny now how the Chinese are buying up Hollywood. And this is the reason why I don't go to movies anymore. Because it's always these China. It's oh no, whatever happens, space aliens come, are gonna kill. Either want to be our friends or kill us. But no, it's the Chinese that come and save us. It's the Chinese boosters that save the Martian, Matt Damon. It's just stupid shit. And then, God forbid, you say anything bad about China, and they're like, oh, you racist towards Chinese people! Even though they have more fucking money than they know what to do with. You watch the show called Border Security. It's a big hit here in Canada. I don't know if they have a version of it in the States. But practically 9 out of 10 of the people that are coming over to Canada that have way too much money, that go over the limit, are Chinese. They're people just trying to get out of fucking China, or trying to use the few loopholes that they do have in that country to not have to invest in the real estate bubble that is completely overpriced, about 77% of just completely overrated of that economy, compared to other countries like Canada, where you see a lot of Chinese people that are coming over, and they'll, use the excuse that they're having their kid as a foreign exchange student, but then they'll go and buy a house and they have equity there and they can take profits off of it. But that's good for people that have the money and are trying to invest, but ultimately it's just just goes to show you how much we're giving China just all these freebies, all of this stuff that's just, it's meant to take manufacturing jobs, like textiles. The textile industry almost practically doesn't exist in North America. Some places in Mexico, but most of it's in China now. And I know there's a lot of health issues associated with the textile industry and whatnot. But take stucco, for example. You can't actually get a working stucco machine for like those new homes that are being built, when they put like the it's kind of like a mixture of like pretty much the stuff to keep around bricks so that it doesn't get damaged and whatnot like that, and make it look cool. And I was talking to this German stucco guy who was working on these homes, and was just saying, he was saying how he has to go either to Germany to get to Europe to get stucco stuff, and if not, he has to get stuff ordered from Asia, like Japan and China. Just because there's absolutely no manufacturing places for the stucco thing here in North America. It's just, there used to be so many different types of skills and trades and industries that were focused mainly here in Canada or in the States or even in Mexico, because there's still cheaper there. But and it's a better alternative than having to deal with that whole international trade, and with the amount of time that it takes for stuff to come from China, which is a lot longer than it takes from Mexico. So there's a lot of those aspects that get put in there for the economic sense of things. But what I think is great about this whole wave of nationalism is that, before, people used to think nationalism as a not so much as a bad thing, but a dangerous thing. And let's be honest, Trump is a wild card. Nobody knows, we have a good indication. We've known that he's been against these free trade deals that have very little to do with actual trade. And that's what I think is kind of interesting, how the media talks about, these trade deals, Trump's opposition to the trade deals. It's like, okay, if you want free trade, you can just make up a thing real quick and do free trade. But if you look at these documents, like the TPP, which they held as the most secretive thing for the longest time, had to get how many different versions of it through WikiLeaks over a couple of years that I was reading, through the investment chapter, the environmental chapter, what was it, the all these different aspects that have absolutely nothing to really do with trade, but has a lot more to do with controlling the rights of farmers to replant seeds, just hitting aspects of society and the way that we do things that have been around for thousands of years. Like, if the free trade agreements in the UN, the globalists had their way, farmers would be paying every single year for one type of seed. They wouldn't be able to save it, wouldn't be able to. And in the States, they're going after farmers. Here in Canada, they've gone after farmers that have had their fields contaminated because of the winds and other. You're talking about patenting life, and when you have winds that get blown up through all kinds of different areas of through the jet stream, they can find that a crop's been contaminated from a GMO crop anywhere from 50 to 100 kilometers away. So there really is no way around, no defense that a farmer has for growing a lot of his crops and stuff. So to the average farmer who's been perfecting saving seeds and getting a stronger strain, they may think that their crop isn't genetically modified, because it's just gone through a very long series of picking the strongest seeds, so that they think, oh well, that's just years and years of their product that they've had from either their hard work or even past generations' hard work. That's their intellectual property. They're thinking, oh well, the reason why I'm not having to spray as much pesticide and the way it's growing better is because of the selection process. But no, then you have these guys that are going around, these little like tattletales in the States and here in Canada too. Well, they'll go around and start testing your certain aspects and see if any of that stuff is genetically modified. And there's no defense for the farmers. Average farmer can't afford $1 million or $2 million multi-million-dollar lawsuit and defense fees. Like, it's ridiculous. It's a total system that's designed against just the average person. And I think it's ridiculous how the media tries to put it down to, oh no, there is no globalism. It's funny how the New York Times, the most deceitful media organization has probably ever existed. I mean, it's probably up there with The Onion right now with the credibility of the mainstream media, has tried to go out and say, oh no, there is no globalist. No, there is no global government plan. Well, and other mainstream media aspects, they're saying, oh no, the New World Order is in threat now that Hillary Clinton's not getting in. And now the Brexit and Trump, our plans and our dreams for a one world government is being... Here they are trying to deny it exists in one aspect, and then completely admitting it and saying we need to not vote for Trump before the elections on the other. So you can't have your cake and eat it too in this regards, because most people who actually do their own research, who take anywhere from 20 minutes to half an hour a day looking at different types of news articles, will realize that they're full of shit. And, it's gotten to the point where the brainwashed millennials are usually the ones, the younger generation, I have to say, are the ones that are, I'm a 90s kid. I don't consider myself a millennial. I was kind of just in that age range where they do kind of consider people millennials, but I'm just at that at the boundary where it's that I like to consider myself a 90s kid, because I'm like at the age where I'm in my 30s now, and I don't believe in freaking having a cell phone. I don't use a cell phone. I'm happy with a landline because, I don't really need it right now. I'm not at the point where I need to have a cell phone, and if I do have a cell phone, I like to actually talk to people, not text them. So, oh no, big social blunder right here. I'm an outcast, with my crazy beard. Might as well be living out in the forest off the grid. If only. But I just can't understand how so many people just reacted as Trump is the worst person ever. And here they are just citing all these things about him that is completely false. They don't have any quotes. And hey, I'll admit, when Trump said most of the people coming from Mexico are rapists and murderers and stuff like that, I was like, oh, that's kind of a blunder. But, if you say some of them, but that just goes to show you the difference between someone who is an outright businessman who speaks his mind for quite some time. You want to look at how I have to give Trump credit. The guy doesn't mind self-deprecating humor. Just look on YouTube, all the commercials that he's been involved in. There's even one where he's motorboating a girl, just because he's the Trump, it's just hilarious. And obviously it was done as a PR stunt and stuff like that. So that stuff you can kind of laugh and kind of giggle at, but actually trying to go out and saying that he's a rapist and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, there was apparently one domestic thing where he had with this ex-wife, where she said that he raped her, but then she says, oh, it wasn't really rape. And it's like, what? I'm sorry, no, there's rape and there's if you don't want to have sex and, but hey, domestic aside, there's a lot of fucked up shit that happens in households and stuff like that, but there's a difference between when you're actually married with someone and having a domestic dispute and going on, trying to rape somebody who doesn't even know you or you don't know them or stuff like that, right? So there's a lot more ambiguity involved in that. And the two separate lawsuits that they tried to bring up against Trump were dropped, mostly because the person who created the lawsuit didn't even have the balls to give their real name or show up in court. So, and I loved how the media tried to say, oh, because they incorrectly filled out the paper wrong. It's like, are you kidding me? You think, like, anybody who knew, like, the whole reason why they put these lawsuits out there, it was totally politically motivated. I mean, they went after all of the women that were in any of his beauty phoned up about 6,000 to 9,000 of prior contestants and tried to get them all and only 9 would come out. And I'm sorry, but when you actually look at the question, even the family members of those people were coming out and saying, no, that's bullshit. There's one lady who wanted him to go to one of her restaurants or something like that, and he wasn't able to go to. So obviously, she took it out. So a lot of that stuff is politically motivated. But when you look at just the questionable code words and just the whole fact that there could be an underground sex ring attributed to the Clintons, and just the massive amounts of times that both of those people have, Hillary and Bill have gone to Epstein's mansion, opposed to the maybe one time that's documented that Trump ever went there. One or two times, that's when you're in a kind of small elite circles and stuff like that, it's possible to run into people like that. But when you have Bill going on the Alita Express plane, documented about 20 some odd times, 23 times is I think the number that I got, and Clinton at least 6 times confirmed, then it really makes you wonder exactly what kind of stuff was going on there. But the media didn't cover that. There's so many things the media could have done their due diligence and actually be considered now as a credible news source, but instead they went all in for Hillary Clinton. And that's where the media is losing power. That's where they've lost power. And now they're trying to have the audacity to come out and say what's a fake news site and what's not. And social justice warrior Professor Aide, who's a self-admitted feminist, who's talking about how all these people are they hate social justice warriors, and all these news sites that are conservative are fake. It's fuck off. Here you are, you have no fucking grounds. After almost every single mainstream media poll was completely fucking wrong, oversampled for more Democrats, let's be honest. They were the most disingenuous media cycle I've ever seen from any country in the planet. I mean, we're talking about maybe compared to communist style propaganda. That's how bad it was. And I mean, even here in Canada, they were running attack pieces against Putin, running attack pieces against Trump, no attack pieces against Hillary Clinton. And I was just fuck off. And people have had enough. And you're right to your own opinion. There's nothing people can do or say that's going to stop you from going out to do your own research. And for anybody listening to this video and this rant, I mean, I kind of go on for, when I do talk, it's usually for an hour and a bit. So thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. But yeah, just, keep putting your opinions out there. Do your own YouTube channels if it comes down to it. I think that's a great idea for people to get out their viewpoint. And yeah, keep on rocking in the free world there, folks, for as long as it stays free. And I guess I'd have to say the biggest concern that I have is this whole how the media is trying to support this narrative that the democratic process isn't a good thing anymore. I mean, they're trying to attack the Electoral College. And yeah, it's a screwed up system, but it's also, in the end, a system that was designed to give a lot of rural areas more of a voice and representation. Because if they were to go off the popular vote in the States, you'd pretty much be just running the election on what people in New York and Los Angeles think, and they're the most out of touch with the average American person that you could possibly get in that country. So, the race war thing, every time there's something race related, they have to report it as if it's the biggest thing, when more people die from car accidents, and hospital acquired infections, and just probably from getting killed from like vending machines and stupid shit like slipping in the shower than they do from freaking the stuff that they're talking about in the news and making a big deal out of. And I'm not saying there's no problems, in that country. I mean, there's even problems here in Canada when it comes to the police and natives and different other minority groups and stuff like that. I've seen in Toronto and stuff, like where they're going after Italian families that, and thinking they're like drug dealers when they were just like, God-fearing, like people that are just horrible fucking things that you're finding out about, different situations. But, anytime that kind of stuff happens, it has to be looked at from a situational kind of like, it has to be looked at that like scenario and examined for what happened, not just kind of done as a blanket kind of thing. Oh, Black Lives Matter, police are brutality, are trying to kill people, because I don't think most police people are trying to go out there to kill people when they think about starting their shifts. That's just ridiculous. A lot of them have to put up through a lot of bullshit domestic stuff and a lot of and there's also a lot of, I don't agree with Trump's stop and frisk policy. That's something I think is, but I understand that when you're in cities that have high murder rates, apparently New York was able to drop their murder rates through stop and frisk, but I mean, it's also the same part where you're seeing like black judges that are getting stopped like 5 times like a week just trying to get to and from their job, getting the whole stop and frisk treatment. So it's obviously being applied the wrong way by police. And I think it's kind of interesting how Obama administration has like they haven't helped at all. Like, I love how Obama says, I'm not a division president, like grin from ear to ear, like lying sack of shit. Are you fucking kidding me? All you've been doing is giving credibility to Black Lives Matter protesters, and oh my god, it's ridiculous. And I wouldn't have a problem with Black Lives Matter if they actually gave a damn about black lives, but they don't care about black on black violence. They could give a shit about that. It's all police brutality. It's all, you've been oppressed by the system. And hopefully they get some more urban gardens growing and stuff like that. That's a good way to fix poverty. When you get all these places with all these abandoned houses throughout the states, turn it all into fields. Start growing stuff. Get get your own kind of sustenance for food and stuff. Like there's different programs where you can start getting more invested into the community. But no, they have like Black Lives Matter has like Assata Shakur is like one of their inspirational leaders who is wanted on the FBI's terror list or whatnot for killing a bunch of police officers and then screwing off to Cuba. So I mean, it's really not a genuine movement when they're out there calling for dead pigs, and that's not how you're going to bridge a gap between police and minority relations. It's a total just scapegoat to try to blame one group like the police or the government or stuff like that. Meanwhile, it was the police under like the Department of Justice and all of this crap that was going on with the upper echelons of law enforcement and the different government agencies that were pushing for the militarization of police since back through Bush. I mean, when Bush started doing the militarization of police, Clinton even did some aspects of it after the whole, trying to think here, after Waco and after the whole Oklahoma City bombing, stuff like that. They put in a lot of kind of like tactics to talk about the homegrown terrorism and how average Americans could be more of a threat than Al Qaeda and all this bullshit that's just been, I mean, there's like videos out there that are where they're training police talking about how the founding fathers were originally terrorists and how people who are sovereign citizens or free men on the land and stuff like this are like, the like worse than Al Qaeda. Meanwhile, they have like fucking Muslim terrorist training fucking camps in different parts of the states that the police aren't even allowed on because of just the politics involved. So you can't just blame it all on the police when the police in the past 10 years have been told you need to wear more militarized outfits, you need all these giant MRAP vehicles because you got all these crazy gun-loving libertarians and constitutionalists, and they're gonna kill you all when the Great Cleansing comes. That's exactly how they've been talking to the police. And you got to the police on the average who just want to, improve their community, that realize that a lot of this stuff is bullshit. That the militarization and bringing in these giant MRAPs and yeah, they're cool toys, but ultimately it's not helping things in the community. It's making things more divisive than they've ever been before. And I love how Obama has practically, what it really does, and Alex Jones has put a good point in this, saying that what they ultimately want to do is have the UN come in and regulate the Strong Cities Initiative and to regulate what exactly police can or can't do. And I think that's pretty fucked up, because that's just more globalist control for things that look like that's a certain situation, that's a problem that's done one certain way, where you have that whole dichotomy of police militarization, police brutality, and the oppressive minorities, the oppressed minorities, and the fact that there's all this unemployment and stuff, and the hopelessness of it all. And then you have the government that's openly trying to tell these police, oh no, you need to be more tougher on the American citizens. You need more militarizations. You need to throw flashbangs and do all these SWAT raids on houses where they don't even check to find out if the person they're after lives there in the first part. And there's been many people who have had their lives completely turned upside down, who have lost even lost loved ones from these faulty SWAT teams, the SWAT raids that were completely ill-advised and done on just a whim. And when they're going after farmers for having co-ops with other farmers in their community in the States, that shit has got to stop. I mean, you're going after farmers and you're treating them like they're freaking gonna go into a school with a freaking bomb trapped to their vest. It's ridiculous. But so I mean, it's definitely a global agenda to try to make it so that there's this one either economic, either financial, or even through laws, environmental laws that are being passed that is just ridiculous, where people in Africa aren't allowed to develop, where they're practically told, no, you have to burn shit in your huts with straw and stuff like that to heat your house, because God forbid if we were ever to put a clean coal plant or other alternative forms of energy to help your village develop. No, we're just gonna pretty much use the Four Horsemen economic hitman method of having a dictator who gets installed in your country who doesn't give a shit about his people, who ends up taking huge loans from the IMF and living like a king and not putting a lot of that stuff into the people whatsoever. And then when it comes time to actually pay that loan off, well, there's no money there. So what does the UN do? They come in and they say, oh, okay, well, we'll make a deal. Well, that little power, that hydroelectric plant that you have over there? Well, we're gonna take ownership of that. And that's gonna be IMF owned, and then you have to pay us through taxes and stuff like that, like they tried to do in Latin countries with even the water crisis, and the people were like, no, we're not paying an extra 300% increase price and having to pay for our own water utilities. And shit hit the fan. And good. I'm glad it did. People were protesting. And that's what's going to happen. And people actually ended up dying and having the U.S. And UN defend the corporate interests over the people that were legitimately protesting. And that is the UN. That is the global agenda right there. If you don't like it, then you are fucked. There's no recourse. You can't go to your local MP. You can't even go to your own prime minister or president of the country that you live in. You have to get on a plane, get security and all this other stuff, and have tons of money, all these checks, and where you have to go across to another country or even overseas to be able to talk to someone to get your case heard. That's how ridiculous it's going to get, and that's what they're trying to push towards it. And that's why I think that this backlash against, and people are saying, oh, this right wing backlash against globalism, and like, well, some of them say globalism. A lot of them don't even like to admit globalism because, let's be honest, about 15 years ago, the media wouldn't even admit Bilderberg. The media wouldn't even admit, different aspects of the shadow government that are completely now in the open thanks to WikiLeaks. There used to be a time in the 90s, if you were to say that CNN was completely manipulated for government propaganda, aside from that whole fake Iraqi Kuwaiti incubator baby story, or the fake Scud missile attack that they had on CNN, where they had the little like, fucking fake alarm in the background, and they had the little fake Scud missile coming across with Scud missile written on it. Oh my god. That was back when satellite feeds really did show you exactly what was going on. When you had, if you had satellite cable, you could see what was going on before they went to the live feed. But anyways, people would think you were crazy because, oh, God forbid, you're dissing the most trusted name in news. There couldn't possibly be child pedophile rings in the UK. There couldn't possibly be any kind of Dennis Hastert-related Republican speaker pedophile rings that were going on in the US. No, none of that stuff was going on. In fact, they always had your best interest, and they definitely weren't spying on you. Yeah, total bullshit. And I think the people now are starting to really kind of, like, the people who are awake, the people who just kind of take whatever news that they get in their little kind of echo chamber Facebook groups, those people really are going to be hard to reach. And let's be honest, that's just how it's been programmed. I mean, I had to talk to my little brother. He's a complete millennial. He is, millennials. I don't even call him. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to be more swayed towards the whole, social justice aspect of things and stuff like that. But even he kind of realized, yeah, it's kind of going over the top to the point where people are getting, so you got to have a talk with people who still aren't kind of awake to what's really going on. And that's understandable. A lot of people, politics is a very divisive thing. You start talking about politics in a public area, you're very likely to get into a debate or even an argument with someone. So, and especially nowadays with this whole kind of like, you're all individuals, you're all special snowflakes. Go out and find your best friends and have your little snowflake groups and don't listen to any other criticism and be who you are. A total fucking bullshit there. I mean, yeah, in a way, it's good to have a celebration of individuality. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're also talking about being an individual by conforming into a group that doesn't believe in any kind of individualistic aspects. So it's like, yes, you're an individual. You have completely gone on the bandwagon of hating anybody who doesn't have the same opinion as you. Congratulations. You are now a level 10, Lotus? I'm trying to remember what they call the guy from Community. That whole thing there with Chevy Chase, like a Lotus Master or something. I don't fucking know, but oh my god, it's gotten ridiculous. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm just taking my time to just do a video on this. Mostly that too, and I'm also a nerd, so I'm playing like an online game where I'm putting way too much time in, which I should probably be focusing on maybe this channel or doing other things like that. But I mean, my back is pretty screwed up. I've got 3 messed up discs in the lower part. That's why I'm always kind of trying to adjust myself when I'm doing these damn videos, because even sitting in this chair for like an hour hurts like hell. But I mean, if it's kind of good to see that there are a lot of different organizations out there that are making the effort, that aren't mainstream media organized or controlled by corporate interests, and are getting the news out there, are getting different narratives than what's being spewed. Because a lot of the times the mainstream media is not going into things at depth to explain what's really who's pulling the strings behind it. They just give you a very 5 o'clock news. Oh, this is what happened. Oh, Trump's in hot water again for blah 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 blah. Hillary Clinton looks presidential. Blah 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 blah. Here we have is the news, the weather. Oh, some cat got trapped up in a tree. Oh wow, that's news apparently. And that's pretty much how it gets brought to you in a cycle. So the average working person that's just getting home, having dinner, and has just got their feet up on the couch or wherever in the recliner, just watching TV, isn't going to take that time to go in and realize how, to investigate a story or do more research on a story to find out whether or not, they're being bullshitted or not. So I think what it really comes down to, see, for me, I like to, there's plenty of channels on YouTube and just websites that I will go to that I cringe through. Like TYT, oh my God, Democracy Now! Used to be objective, but this whole Trump election, all they did was attack him. And I mean, obviously there's the whole fact that they have received money from George Soros groups from Democracy Now! And stuff, but there was a time, especially around the early 2000s, and mid-2000s, where they were actually legitimately, a decent opposition to the mainstream narrative. And, I think it's funny. I mean, I watch a lot of RT. I like the Kaiser Report. I also like the X22 Report. That guy does some, I think his name's Dave. He does some really good, and does some really great, he's up to at least 1,000 or something different videos on the Economic Collapse series, and he really knows his stuff. But I mean, the thing is, when you're doing a channel that's basically devoted to an economic collapse, when you have a central banking kind of cartel monetary system that could go at any time and is very unpredictable because it's controlled when people want things to happen, it's very hard to keep a thing saying, oh, well, the next economic, it's going to happen, but you could see all the signs when they report on the job losses, the loss of purchasing power with the dollar, and the selling of treasury bonds internationally, that's ultimately hurting the U.S., or the move over from U.S. Treasury bonds to different commodities and stuff like that, then that's definitely stuff that definitely needs to be noticed, and they do a good job at tracking just the kind of week to week greatest abominations to the stuff that's being carried out in the name of the people. So, I mean, I like those kind of channels. There's others, many other channels that I watch that I do agree with, and other ones that I don't. And I think that's a good thing for people to do, because it gets you out of just, the left-right narrative. Here we have politics, which really affects any aspect of our lives at one point or another, from our day-to-day thing. One thing we do, or what we can or can't do, is govern by the laws and rules and regulations of the countries that we live in. And, that's kind of one of those things where, you don't really appreciate it until you actually look at the fact that, politics isn't a two-dimensional thing. It's not left, center, right. It's a very three-dimensional thing with less government control, more government control, individual liberties and collective, there's a lot of different aspects to those types of schools of thinking that makes it more of a kind of three-dimensional model, as opposed to the just left-right two-dimensional paradigm. So, and that's even being destroyed because this whole new kind of uprise against the globalist movement is a form of nationalism. And the thing about the fact that it's not being so much as a left-right paradigm as it is now a nationalism versus a globalism aspect of things is that it really kind of changes the entire political paradigm. And the media hasn't picked up on this. And that's one of the reasons why they're lagging behind. And that's one of the reasons why nobody really takes them seriously. There's more, I think Alex Jones has just as much of a following as BBC ranked in the, and BBC has an entire British government, one of the most powerful governments in the world behind it, and Alex Jones is just a mom and pop kind of organization with a very small group of people that are creating huge amounts of change by going against the narrative. Mind you, yeah, some of the times that they talk about things like with the Ebola scare, certain stuff like that, they go like Hairgate with the iPhone thing, grabbing it. I don't know if that was a joke, if they were doing a serious news thing on that, but just certain stuff that, like, some videos that they do, but that's the thing with any outlet out there. Any outlet is going to have a certain percentage of stuff where you have to question. But, I mean, that's the beauty about it. If you look at different forms of media outlet and you see that one is talking about an issue from one aspect or one view, and then you read the other side of the argument and you say, hey, both of these have valid reasons why these people are behind it or against or for it, then that makes sense. Then you could say, okay, well, I know that the person that is either supporting or against this issue, or for whatever many different options there are in this issue, isn't some just complete crazy person that has no information and doesn't really think things through, but they actually have a reason why they think is important to them. That's a legitimate and valid reason. That isn't some superficial crap that really doesn't matter in the long run of things, If they both have their, valid points, then they're both equally allowed to have that opinion, They should be allowed to be entitled to their opinion, and whatever people agree with or whatever, reigns supreme in the end, so be it. But we're not getting that now. We're getting pretty much everything being controlled and everything being manipulated and fed to us as if we're supposed to take things, we're supposed to like ingest things and think along the thought patterns that the collective puts in there. Like, you're not allowed to question the wage gap myth. You're not allowed to, question the authenticity of Black Lives Matter. You're not allowed to question whether or not bringing in a bunch of unvetted Sunni Muslims is a good idea from a very violent part of the world without any real, actual background checks. And it's not like we're working with the government of Syria, because most of those government buildings have been bombed by the U.S. and by Russia and the whole civil war thing that's been going on there. So it's really hard to there's a lot of different narratives out there you have to question. And I guess the last little bit I've been kind of leaning more kind of center right, I guess. But I mean, I don't even really like to think it that way, because there's a lot of stuff that there's a lot of Republican values and conservative values that I disagree with. I would never vote for the Conservatives here in Canada just because they've been a huge part of switching Canada's resources over to a fire sale for the globalists, to making in many different trade deals that have done nothing but screw over manufacturing jobs, or just jobs in general, or have reduced the ability for farmers to have to save or reuse their seeds and stuff like that. There's just a lot of different aspects that all of the parties here in Canada have really kind of done to push a globalist viewpoint, whether or not it's through the harsh environmental regulations, through the global carbon taxes and stuff like that, cap and trade, or whatever little scheme that they're going to try to implement, which, if you look at the fact that the offset market is just a total, is just ripe with manipulation and fraud, it just goes to show you how, especially when we have India and China that are completely exempt from a lot of the aspects of these climate initiatives. It's just, it really is a two-tiered system where people that are close to that are following the globalist plan and are all kissing ass to the NGOs get the special treatment, but anybody else who's trying to push more of a nationalistic, or having their country's interest over international monetary, financial, political, and economic order, and have the control of their own prosperity, then that gets completely thrown in. You're a climate denier, or they're using terms that are attributed to the freaking Holocaust. That's how crazy these people are, and they have these professors that are afraid. Because if they refuse to call some person a Z, or refuse to fall into this whole cultural Marxist programming, then they are not only in fear of their job, but they're in fear of physical harm and having their whole educational like experience completely wrecked by a bunch of these social justice warriors that are just screaming in the classes that aren't actually doing anything. I mean, you're getting these social justice warrior groups and Black Lives Matter that actually wants segregation. Like, you're talking about groups that aren't supposed to be racist, that can't be racist by the mainstream media's logic, and yet are completely wanting, like, black-only safe spaces or Latino-only safe spaces. Like, that's the most racist shit I've ever fucking heard since the 60s, or since the Koch brothers wanted to resegregate the inner city schools. I mean, let's be honest. You know, you gotta call both sides for the racist bullshit, no matter, you know, who it really is. But I mean, you can't just say that it's one group or another when there's many different prevalent aspects of things that are being pushed through different agendas that want things pushed in a certain way that they want things to be run. You know, it's just how it is. The more money talks, bullshit walks, as the saying goes. So I think this is a great thing for like just kind of like countries as they are. For people that love their country as it is. I don't want Canada to become the North American Union. And I know a lot of British people that, you know, love the fact that they're in England. They know it's a highly overtaxed place and the weather is horrible and the food is, you know, inspired, to say the least. Blood pudding and all that stuff. But they genuinely love the history, the strength and the spirit of the people, whether or not they're referring to the strength of World War II and the fight against losing control of what actually goes on in their own government. You know, like, those are people that have every right to be pissed off, and they're getting guilted in this, because people voted for the Brexit, now all this crap's gonna happen, and you're all these millennials are all freaking out and stuff like that because they never knew what it was like to have an actual country. They get brought up in this hole where everything's great with the European Union and all these like millions and fucking billions of dollars that are getting wasted, or pounds that are whatever denomination, euros, that are getting wasted in Brussels to these just ridiculous freaking circle jerks of NGO government handouts and NGO and government handouts that they're giving to multinationals. So, you know, I mean, people shouldn't feel bad that they love their country, and, you know, obviously you don't want to when you start saying that, oh, my leader is and I love my country and I love my leader can do no wrong, that's when you start to get into some really crazy territory. But I mean, I think a lot of people who voted for, like, let's say Trump, for example, realized that was more of the people's populism vote for somebody that is an establishment, isn't part of the ruling elite. And so that itself is a huge pressure. There's a lot more pressure on a Trump presidency right now than there ever would have been under a Hillary presidency. Let's be honest. Hillary, if she would have got in, all these social justice warriors would be fucking, oh my god, it'd be like, the media would be like having like that little kind of like glow, like, you know, in the Obama deception from Alex Jones, where they show the swearing in of Obama, all these crowds of people just, yeah, we got a first black president, oh yeah, the media's all like just fucking circle jerking each other, oh yes, this is all the best thing that's ever happened to America, you know, and all this like just total cult fucking, you know, admiration for their follower. But yet, as soon as Trump gets in, then, you know, the media and the establishment are like, oh my god, we gotta do everything we can to fight this fascist, terrorist motherfucker. Yeah, he hates women. Like, oh my god. Just the worst shit you could possibly fucking think. And it's just seeing that dichotomy, that just like bit of extremes between how when the establishment candidate gets in, the mainstream media and if people are suckered into it enough, believe that that's actually an agent of change and good, when you have somebody that, like Trump, for example, yeah, he's got a huge following of people, of Republicans, or people that never even voted Republicans that are gone for Trump this election. The thing about that is that he's riding a wave of populism, and if he doesn't deliver on the promises that he does about changing the system and going against it, he is going to be judged a lot harshly than Hillary Clinton or Obama ever would be. There's no getting around that. I am speaking complete truth there. I mean, unless Hillary goes in there and started World War III, then people would be like, oh, wow, what a horrible president. That was a bad idea. And I think more people should have been like, whew, oh, we just averted World War III by electing Trump. I mean, he's not perfect, but hey, Then, oh my God, folks, I know I never chose to side this election, and I know you're all probably really hurt or celebrating and really hungover right now. So I just want to let the healing process begin. It's like, fuck off. Like, here you are trying to make it seem as if, like, Trump, for people who are Hillary, and that's like a vanilla aspect. That's like, taking like a DeFranco version of things where he's like trying to make it be like, okay, calm down, people, we're going to a lot of ways to go and stuff like that. I'm just like, hey, as a Canadian, I had no vote. I had really no dog in this fight. I'm glad that I don't have to worry about fucking nukes coming over fucking the Arctic to, take out the U.S., which is probably going to fuck up, everything in Canada, because our economy is pretty much tied to it, and you've also got the trade winds that are going to be pushing things up right through where I fucking live in southern Ontario, so that's just pretty much a recipe of fucking death if Hillary Clinton were to be elected president. So by all means, you should all be, either celebrating or, depressed that your, candidate didn't win. And even then, I mean, like, I voted for someone here in Canada. I didn't vote for Harper or Trudeau. I went for Mulcair, and I know I'm probably going to get some lambast for that for anybody listening to this who knows what I'm talking about for the NDP here in Ontario, or in Canada, but I went for him because I knew that as an actual real opposition party, not the controlled left-right paradigm what we have with the Conservatives and Liberals here in Canada, that they would actually have to try to do what they said in their budget, making it balanced. I mean, the Liberals were saying, oh yeah, we're going to do all this stuff, we're going to do all this blah, 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 all these tax credits for kids and for families and stuff like that, and then they're all like, when they get it, and then they start spending just ridiculous amounts of money. And the 1 year that Trudeau's been in office, he's spent billions of dollars, and a lot of that isn't even on Canadians. It's on, like, UN children's relief funds and other stupid climate shit and stuff that he's he's throwing money left, right, and center to other countries when we got tons of problems here in Canada. We've got an entire, like, native population up north that doesn't even clean drinking water and shit like that. And I understand when you're living up north, there's a lot of different, like, problems and stuff like that. But I'm all for, like, helping out Canadians. I'm all for making sure that we have a diverse array of people here in Canada from different cultures and different religions that don't have to worry about fucking their next meal, don't have to worry about these increased bullshit carbon fucking prices increase and taxes that are making it harder for fucking people to heat their fucking homes when, it's Canada. We have cold winters. When you're making the single mom or people that are out there not making a lot of money or have been laid off or on EI because of all this bullshit fucking trade deals that have sent our good jobs overseas, then how are you supposed to pay for everything with the increase in food costs, the increase in hydro costs, the increase in housing costs, and be able to live? It really is it's an exercise in futility, pretty much. I mean, even here in Canada. I mean, here in Canada, we get screwed over a lot. When it comes to anything from the States we pay a lot more stuff that comes from the States. You try to buy a new video game here in Canada, you're paying $90 to $100, not the $60 to $70 that you get in the States. The exchange rates and everything, they totally screw us over here. And you know why they do it? Because they know the Canadians are polite and will bend over. We'll take it in the ass with a smile because we're polite Canadians. We drink our Tim Hortons coffee. We watch our hockey. We like the maple syrup, and drinking our beer. But when it really comes down to the fucking brass tacks, we're getting fucked. And, all of our resources that we have, when they're trying to do all this austerity bullshit, they never even included countries like Canada that do very well during recessions because we have a lot of resources to give to the world. And I mean, you compare that to places like Japan, which needs to have practically everything exported to them. Exported to them, is, we definitely have that ability to come back, to bounce back from harsh economic times. But we have pretty much, under the Conservatives, under the Liberals even, have sold out a lot of our public assets and privatized services that we probably shouldn't have privatized. And we've lost a lot of that tax revenue, and we'll never see it again. And that's just the way that the Conservatives and the Liberals and the globalists have been affecting Canadian politics. And I'm so deeply invested in the politics of North America and most of the world right now, just because of this huge political backlash that is going against the establishment and their pompous assery of just how they try to make it so that they are the sole authorities and anybody else that disagrees with them should be put in jail. And you're talking about the same agendas, like the environment, the UN agenda of trying to make it so that people have tax by the mile fucking systems put in their cars to charge them. Like Origo is coming up with this system where even if you don't have they do it for people that don't even have hybrid cars or have hybrid cars that don't think they're paying enough tax. It's just stupid shit that they're doing nowadays. And it'd be nice to see more of a ultimately, until we fix the monetary system of the planet, we're going to have to deal with this greed. We're going to have to deal with this huge inequality and just plundering of the Earth's natural resources that could be used for everyone. But, it's at that point where, I don't take any kind of ideology. I don't believe in socialism, communism. I don't even, even the free market, the capitalist system we don't have now, because when you start bailing out big banks and other companies like that, it's more of a socialist model. And, America has become more socialist than they've ever became under, probably the first thing Obama did was turn that country into a socialist corporate welfare state. So, it's kind of interesting to see how that's happened. But I've been ranting on for quite some time now, so I'm going to just leave it there because it's a marathon listening to my rants for more than an hour. I don't even know how much time I've been going on here. But thank you very much for listening to what I have to say, and keep on rocking in the free world. Don't let social justice warriors get you down. Don't let people, get you down for voting for whoever you want to vote for. That's ridiculous. When you have people that are out there trying to say, oh, well, we love living in a free and Western democratic society, but we don't like the outcome if it's not our person that wins. It's just total fucking sore loser. But, you also have to look at the bright side, that this appointment of not Trudeau, but Trump is a good thing for people in the States, because that's at least pushing off the globalist aspect of trying to control things for the New World Order agenda by at least 4 to 8 years, and that's something at least. And hopefully they can expose the Clinton pedophile network through Pizzagate, and or at the very least put them in prison and show them that they're not above the law. Anthony Weiner, Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton, fucking you name it. And all these people that have been involved and openly knew that they were doing stuff illegally should have their asses thrown in fucking jail, or at least be tried for the crime beforehand to find out whether or not they should be thrown in jail. Obviously, I'm not saying they should go without a jury and have any kind of legal process, but it's at the point where it's so open and apparent that. It was the media that made a big thing about Nixon, and Nixon didn't even do half the stuff that Clinton has done, and the media just complete silences on it. And just seeing that when you look at the 70s, at the actual integrity of news organizations back at the time, that some of them were controlled, but some of them actually did have legitimate journalists that were an older generation that would try to be objective and non-biased. But now journalism is open to anybody. Anybody who thinks that they have to go to a journalist course and spend $10,000 to $20,000 to learn how to be a journalist, You can take a We Are Change like course where they'll show you all the best stuff to do for, for like a fraction of the cost, and you will know what to do for camera, for editing, and stuff like that. I've never done anything like that, but there's courses where you can either self-teach yourself for free, and then it really just comes down to getting the money to go to different events to cover it with a camera, and getting a following that way. And if my back wasn't screwed up, if I had more money, if it wasn't the wintertime and stuff, I'd probably be doing more community aspected videos and going out there and doing news stuff. But I just, I don't have the resources to do it where I am right now. But there's plenty of alternative media sources out there that are doing their job and are doing a damn good job. So, commendations and kudos to them for doing their job. So, but anyways, I'm going to leave it at there because I've been going on for too much. I keep going on and on. But thank you all very much for listening what I have to say in my ranting, and keep on rocking the free world. And I'm it's probably going to have to leave it off there, and hopefully everything calms down, and be kind of nice to see what happens with Trump anyways. So I would take Trump over Hillary any day, just because Hillary was practically talking about World War III. And the fact that a lot of people didn't even realize the fact that she was a World War III candidate and tried to say that Trump, can we really trust Trump with the nuclear codes? It's just really just goes to show you how stupid people are in that country. The ones that don't follow or do any kind of thinking for themselves, which unfortunately in a country with 300, probably up to about 400 million now, if you include the illegals, nobody really does the census things legit anyway. So I'm, out of like a country of like 300 to 400 million people, you're going to get a fair share of people that are crazy. But, the fact that only a very small percentage of people actually vote in that country, that's a scary thought. But it's also an understandable thought because of just the bullshit involved with it and the mind control. So, all right, guys, thank you very much. I will think about things, maybe do another video or something like that. I'm really thinking about doing a video on the Pizzagate thing, because I've noticed there's plenty of videos on there talking about like some of the, but I mean, I think it's good to get, like, I'm going to try to find as many of the Podesta emails that are very kind of like, what? That are kind of eyebrow raising, and probably do that in a couple weeks or whatnot. You see, the thing is, I've been trying to get more news source out of this, but it's just, there's been a complete just zipping of the lips with the NYPD and with the FBI on the whole issue of what's going on with the Anthony Weiner's, what they found with the 650,000 files they found there, and apparently some of the pedophile pictures that they were showing on there. There's like some naked either kid or girl, I don't know, they kind of blanked it up, and to be honest with you, I really don't want to see any of that crap, but apparently they're like naked and weird fucking shit like that. So I think that if there's going to be any whistleblowers, and like, Snowden with the NSA spying, good on him. I think he needs to be pardoned. I watched the movie. I've been studying his life for quite some time, and the sacrifices that he did were, it was legitimate. He did try a couple of times to get a hold of people to be like, hey, why are we spying on more Americans than we are internationally? Or why are we putting kill switches and main infrastructure, like key infrastructure in other countries, that we could just electronically shut their systems off and cause huge damage if they decide not to play ball or be friendly with us anymore. Like, that's some fucked up shit. That's going way beyond national security and defense. That is you practically being an intelligence agency for the central banks and the Congress assholes who don't have to worry about insider trading because they're protected. So that's really what it comes down to. But anyways, that's where we need a whistleblower right now, is for that whole Pizzagate thing. Because, I mean, even if that person goes to jail, they would be breaking open a huge Clinton-connected Clinton Foundation in the Haiti area there, that whole pedophile ring. If that's actually true, that will destroy the mainstream media and the establishment. So hopefully that'll happen. And I guess we'll have to see how things go on from there. So I'm going to leave it off there. This has been Wrecktitution. Thank you very much, and rock on. Peace.